The wind howls across a dying tundra. Ancient ice cracks in the distance, the warmth of a new age creeping across the land like a quiet assassin. Among the shadows of retreating glaciers, a predator once ruled, with teeth like scimitars and a roar that echoed across continents. The saber-toothed cats were apex hunters of myth and muscle. But suddenly, they vanished. Not in the age of dinosaurs, not from disease or predation. So why did one of the most formidable predators in history fall at the dawn of the Holocene? This isn't just a story of extinction. It's a mystery frozen in time. Welcome to the final chapter of the Saber-Tooth. In the shadows of mammoths and under skies darkened by Ice Age storms, there was one predator that reigned with terrifying elegance. It wasn't the biggest, it wasn't the fastest, but it was something else entirely. They called it Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat. Its name, meaning knife tooth, echoes the weaponry it bore. Upper canine teeth that could grow over 11 inches long. Curved like scimitars and sharper than a raptor's talon, these fangs weren't just instruments of death. They were symbols of evolutionary specialization, carved not by accident, but by millions of years of pressure, adaptation, and prey-driven purpose. Unlike modern big cats like lions and tigers, Smilodon wasn't built for the chase. Its limbs were short but stocky, muscular like a bodybuilder's frame, the perfect design for ambush and brute force. Hidden in the tall grass or concealed by forest shadow, it didn't run. It waited. The moment prey ventured too close, it struck, knocking it to the ground with raw strength, then plunging those saber-like teeth deep into the vulnerable neck or belly. But Smilodon wasn't singular. It belonged to a dynasty of saber-tooth cats. From the smaller Smilodon gracilis to the enormous Smilodon populator of South America, a titan weighing up to 1,000 pounds, these cats ruled the Americas from around 2.5 million years ago to as recently as 10,000 years ago. They shared their kingdom with mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths, and beavers the size of bears. This era, the late Pleistocene, was an age of giants, and Smilodon was the apex. Its presence meant power. Its roar signaled fear. It stood unchallenged at the top of the food web. But even kings fall. Smilodon's most iconic feature, those enormous saber teeth, often leads to a crucial misunderstanding. Many imagine these cats driving their fangs into anything that moved, biting through bone like wolves or crushing prey like modern lions, but nothing could be further from the truth. Those sabers were fragile, serrated and sharp, yes, but also prone to breakage if misused. They weren't made for the chaotic crush of combat. They were precision instruments. Smilodon was more surgeon than savage. When it attacked, it used enormous forelimbs to pin and control its prey, often bringing large herbivores to their knees with brute force. Then, once positioned, it delivered a precise strike, often targeting soft, vital areas like the neck or abdomen, avoiding bone altogether. This technique could only work because of another strange adaptation, a jaw range wider than any modern cat. Smilodon could open its mouth nearly 120 degrees wide, an evolutionary necessity to strike with those oversized teeth. But what's more surprising, Smilodon may not have been solitary. Some fossil beds, especially the famous La Brea tar pits in modern-day Los Angeles, show evidence that multiple individuals, possibly from the same social group, were found clustered around the same sites, often surrounding large trapped prey. It's possible that these cats hunted together, or at the very least, shared kills and territory. Social or not, it's clear they lived in a time of abundance. Their prey included bison larger than today's, camels, mammoths, horses, and ground sloths. The land may have been cold, but it was full of life and food. Everything Smilodon needed, resource-rich terrain, slow-moving megafauna, and little predatory competition, was in place. Or so it seemed. Despite their dominance, the truth behind Smilodon's reign was more fragile than it appeared. You see, evolution is a gamble. Every specialization comes with a cost. In the case of Smilodon, the cost was narrow niche dependence. Their entire body plan, hunting style, and even their oversized fangs were tailored for specific prey types, especially megafauna. These were animals larger and slower than modern grazers, often easier to ambush due to their bulk and mobility. But this dependence on large prey would become a dangerous weakness. Even small shifts in prey population, seasonal changes, migration troubles, or environmental stress could throw a wrench into Smilodon's well-oiled strategy. Hunting smaller, swifter animals wasn't just harder, it was also less energy efficient. Imagine spending the same energy stalking a deer as you would a 2-ton sloth, but getting only a fraction of the meal. This vulnerability becomes even more troubling when paired with a changing world. Storms began to shift, seasons grew more erratic, glaciers started moving, not advancing but melting, and in the melting came the end. But before everything collapsed, Smilodon remained, a ghost in the grasses, a titan from another age, gripping to the throne its ancestors had carved. The Ice Age was ending. But this king didn't know his time was up. Not yet. At first it was subtle, a longer spring, a slightly gentler winter. But nature doesn't whisper for long. When the Ice Age began to thaw, it didn't ask permission. It surged forward like a tide. And the world turned upside down. Roughly 12,000 years ago, the Earth entered a new chapter, the Holocene epoch. A geological heartbeat ago in the grand scale of time, but it rippled through every living thing. The great glaciers that had dominated entire continents began to melt. Valleys once filled with ice opened into rivers and grasslands. Forests crept northward, oceans swelled, temperatures climbed. At first glance, this may sound like good news. Warmth returning to a frozen world. But for creatures adapted to the cold, to vast open plains, to predictable seasons and megafaunal prey, it was anything but. For the saber-toothed cats, this was the beginning of the end. The environments in which Smilodon had thrived, vast mammoth steppe, open tundra, where ambush was easy and prey plentiful, began to shrink. Rising forests closed in those open hunting grounds. New plants meant new herbivore behaviors, and the migration patterns of their prey broke down. Even more importantly, their prey itself, the giants, were in trouble. Mammoths, mastodons, giant bison, sloths, ancient camels, all creatures that had evolved to live in a cooler, more stable climate, were now confronted with a planet in transition. They could not adapt quickly enough. Their food sources shifted. Habitats vanished. Reproductively slow with small populations, they began to collapse. And as their numbers declined, so did the fortunes of Smilodon. A predator doesn't just need skill, it needs opportunity. And those opportunities were fading with every year of warming. No longer was everything structured, clean, or predictable. The age of order ended, and nature once again became chaos. The transformation of the landscape wasn't gradual, it was global. The great open grasslands of the Pleistocene began to vanish almost overnight in geological terms. As temperatures rose and precipitation patterns changed, grasses gave way to woodlands and dense forests. Entire biomes were redrawn. For a predator like Smilodon, this posed enormous challenges. Designed for ambush in relatively open environments, it now found itself boxed into cluttered woodlands where prey could spot it easier, run farther, and where maneuvering its muscular, stocky body was far more difficult. To understand why this was devastating, we need to consider how predators are shaped by space. A cheetah relies on open savannas for its blistering speed. A tiger uses dense jungle for close-quarters stealth. But Smilodon was a cold plains ambusher. It thrived where it could stalk behind low brush, where the wind was predictable, and where its wide jaws and heavy limbs could overpower slow, massive prey. Now, the rules had changed. Animals like deer, moose, and elk were more agile, smaller, and quicker. They could dart through forest thickets. Even if Smilodon could catch them, the energy gained wouldn't offset the cost of the hunt. This predator simply wasn't designed for this new game. The energy trade-off was catastrophic. Fewer hunts ended in success. More time was spent tracking, stalking, recovering from failed ambushes. And when prey was captured, it was smaller. Less meat, more running, more danger. Even their claim over territory became complicated. With the fragmentation of megafaunal herds, Smilodon may have had to roam wider distances just to survive, a major demand on an already energy-expensive predator. The Earth was warming not just in temperature, but in rapid unpredictability. And for specialists like Smilodon, that unpredictability was lethal. Mass extinction isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes slowly, not like a meteor, but like a fever. Subtle at first, then crushing. By the time anyone realizes the body is failing, it's already too late. During the early Holocene, this fever gripped the world's megafauna in every corner of the globe. It's estimated that over 70% of large mammal species in North and South America vanished during this transition, an extinction event called the Quaternary extinction, and Smilodon was one of the most prominent victims. This wasn't just about warming, it was about disconnect. The food web was unraveling, plants shifted their growth patterns, prey migrated unpredictably, young were born in the wrong seasons, water sources dried up or changed course, forest fires became more common, likely ignited by lightning or even early human land use. In essence, the finely tuned ecological symphony that had supported Smilodon for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly began playing a new song, and the saber-tooth couldn't keep pace. Its prey was gone, its territory fragmented, its hunting methods outdated, but it didn't go quietly. Fossil evidence suggests Smilodon survived well into this new epoch, clinging on in isolated regions, perhaps adapting in desperation, perhaps turning to smaller prey, or scavenging more often than before. But this was not a new beginning. It was a slow fade, and just when things couldn't get more precarious, a new predator entered the game. One unlike any saber-tooth had faced before. One that didn't kill with claw, but with fire, strategy, and traps. They didn't roar, they didn't run on four legs, and they certainly didn't wield claws. But they hunted just the same, with fire, with weapons, with plans, and with patience far more dangerous than any biological weapon. The humans had arrived, roughly 13,000 years ago, just as climate began to violently shift. Homo sapiens crossed into the Americas. Whether through the Bering Land Bridge or by coastal routes, they came armed not only with stone tools and fire, but with the most dangerous tool of all, collective intelligence. Up until this point, Smilodon had been one of the top predators on the continent. Its battles were physical, strength against strength, claws versus hide. But early humans hunted differently. They didn't just track, they manipulated. They set ambushes, fires, traps. They outthought. These weren't typical confrontations. They were asymmetric wars that no Ice Age predator had evolved to fight. Imagine being the apex predator for thousands of years, your saber teeth unquestioned, your strength unmatched. And suddenly, your prey begins acting strangely. They form tighter herds. They respond to your tactics. They flee before you even make a move. And at the edge of the tree line, a figure stands, upright, silent, watching. The Smilodon wasn't equipped to interpret this kind of threat. It didn't recognize humans as predators, at least not at first. By the time it did, it was already too late. Few direct fossil records exist showing conflict between humans and saber-toothed cats, but the absence of evidence does not equal absence of impact. The overlap in time and extinction is too precise. What Smilodon faced wasn't a new predator in the traditional sense. It was a systemic disturbance to its behavior, its food supply, its entire survival model. Predators can adapt to an enemy, but can they adapt to revolution? To understand how humans may have helped push Smilodon toward extinction, we need to understand a key idea. You don't have to kill a predator to destroy it. Just take away its prey. Human hunters didn't need to face Smilodon head-on. All they had to do was escalate more efficient, large-scale hunting of the very animals the saber-tooth relied on: mammoths, bison, camels, ground sloths. And they did, successfully. The Clovis culture and other early human groups rapidly developed precise flint projectile points, spears, and coordinated group hunting techniques that allowed them to take down even massive animals. Over time, human overhunting likely outpaced reproduction rates of these megafauna. Add ongoing climate stress, and suddenly you have extinct prey populations. and a starving predator. This method of indirect competition is devastating in natural systems. It's death by scarcity. And when prey animals shifted behaviors, becoming more elusive and difficult to locate, Smilodon's extremely specialized hunting style, designed for ambush, not pursuit, was simply mismatched to the new world. Meanwhile, humans only grew in number. They hunted in packs. They had shelters, fires, tools, language, and shared memory. A Smilodon didn't know what a spear was until it was buried in its side. It didn't understand the meaning of smoke until it lost its hunting grounds to fire-cleared field traps. In places like the La Brea tar pits, we find traces of this desperation. Saber-tooths drawn to the cries of trapped prey, only to fall in themselves. An apt if tragic metaphor. They were caught by systems they did not and could not understand. In evolutionary terms, they were outpaced. What sets humans apart isn't just intelligence, it's adaptability. As ecosystems shifted, humans altered their lifestyle. If mammoths vanished, they pivoted to bison. If the forest spread, they learned to work with wood. If temperatures fell, they made better clothing. But Smilodon? It was locked into the body evolution gave it, a form perfected for a world that no longer existed. Here lies the most brutal truth. Nature doesn't favor power. It favors flexibility. And Smilodon, for all its majesty, had very little of it. There is evidence that humans and Smilodon did clash sometimes. A fossilized Smilodon pelvis shows signs of healing from a projectile wound, possibly a spear. But these incidents were likely rare. Far more common was the indirect pressure, habitat compression, prey scarcity, and constant competition. The rise of humans introduced a new rule to the ancient order of predators. Battles were no longer about brute dominance, but about resources, strategy, and even ecological influence. Where Smilodon had evolved to fit a narrow ecological slot, humans rewrote the entire system to serve their needs. In only a couple of thousand years, an instant in evolutionary terms, that invisible new predator overtook the old one, and Smilodon fatalis, one of the most iconic predators to ever live, stepped off the stage of life, leaving behind only fossilized whispers. But there's one more question still unanswered. Why Smilodon? Why did other species survive? Wolves, jaguars, pumas, and not this? To answer that, we need to go even deeper into the biology, the reproductive limits, and the fragile life strategy of the saber-tooth cat. In the museum halls, their skulls stare silently from the past. Jagged sabers, wide jaws, sun-bleached bones. But skulls don't tell you how an animal lived. They tell you how it died. When paleontologists first uncovered the remains of Smilodon, they were baffled by the sheer power etched into every fossil. Immense shoulder blades, fang-like canines, bone structure that screamed of predatory dominance. So how could something like that go extinct? Let's start with the simplest explanation. Energy. Everything in nature is math. Birth rates, caloric intake, territory, success and loss. The saber-toothed cat had evolved for a high-investment strategy. It took tremendous energy to maintain those massive muscles, to hunt slow-moving but dangerous prey. If that equation faltered, less food, more failed hunts, fewer mates, the system collapsed quickly. This made Smilodon what scientists call a K-selected species, an animal that lived life slow and heavy. Few offspring, long development, high parenting investment. Now contrast that with a wolf or a coyote. Smaller, leaner, faster breeding, wide diet range. These R-selected species are built for instability. They survive chaos and even thrive in it. When ecosystems collapsed during the Holocene, many of the K-strategists, especially big predators tied to megafaunal prey, were left with no buffer. For Smilodon, every hunt counted. And when prey became scarce, every failed hunt became a step closer to extinction. Add on reproductive limitations, small litters, long gestation. Suddenly, they couldn't replace themselves fast enough. They weren't just hunters. They were hostages to their past success. So when the climate shifted and humanity arrived, Smilodon didn't have time to evolve. Even if it could adapt, it would have needed hundreds of generations. It had only a few. By the time the last saber-toothed cats walked the earth, they may have already been genetically broken. New studies into the DNA of extinct Ice Age species suggest that toward the end, population bottlenecks became common. That means fewer breeding individuals, lower diversity, and increased defects generation to generation. Think of it like a shrinking gene pool, one that starts to rot from the inside. Without healthy genetic circulation, any predator becomes vulnerable. Diseases spread faster. Mutations go unchecked. Resilience drops. This isn't unique to Smilodon. It has been seen in woolly mammoths, cave lions, even some modern endangered species teetering on the brink. Fossils even hint at physical deformities in later specimens, skeletal abnormalities, healed injuries indicating long lifespans but less adaptive success. It paints a picture not of giant killers, but tired ghosts, struggling to hold on in an unrecognizable world. And as saber-tooth cats became geographically isolated, surviving only in pockets of sparse habitat in South America or near the inland valleys of North America, their ability to migrate and interbreed disappeared. There's even a theory that Smilodon may have been in what ecologists call an extinction vortex, a spiral of feedback loops where small populations lead to lower fitness, which leads to higher mortality, which leads to extinction. This wasn't a single cause. It was death by many small cuts, each one invisible until the final breath was drawn. The death of Smilodon wasn't random, and it wasn't meaningless. It was the result of complex biological design colliding with planetary upheaval, a creature built perfectly for one world, stranded in another. But extinction doesn't erase legacy. If anything, it sets it in stone. Today, Smilodon's skeletal remains continue to tell stories in museum halls and dusty excavation records. In places like the La Brea tar pits, where predators were lured by the false promise of an easy meal, over 2,000 saber-toothed cat fossils have been found, many beautifully preserved in asphalt-locked time. Their bones remind us of what evolution giveth, and what it taketh away. They show that being strong isn't enough. Being fierce isn't enough. Being big isn't always better. And when we look at modern big cats, lions, tigers, jaguars, we see echoes of Smilodon. The same enigmatic eyes, the same predator's grace. But these cats are now struggling as well, not from glacial retreat, but from us, the species they never learned to fear, yet which reshaped the earth forever. Saber-toothed cats were not killed by a single arrow or one bad winter. They were felled by a cascade, and by a world that moved on without them. Perhaps the real question isn't just why they went extinct, but whether we're now watching history repeat itself in the lives of Earth's modern giants. The saber-tooth ruled not with speed but precision, not with endurance but with ferocity. And though it's gone, it left behind a silence that still roars in the Earth's memory. The fall of Smilodon is more than a prehistoric mystery. It's a warning, a reflection, a reminder of how fragile even the apex can be. So next time you hear the growl of a lion or the crunch of a fossil underfoot, remember the saber-tooth. Remember what it took to stand at the top, and how easily the world beneath them changed. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more wild journeys into the past, from Ice Age beasts to ancient oceans deep. What do you think caused the fall of Smilodon? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to explore more prehistoric predators, watch our next video, the apex predator that ruled before the T-Rex. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.